Hello, everybody. My name is Dan Skip Allen, and this is the 52 must-see movies and why they matter. And with me this evening, once again, is Jeremy Adams. Jeremy, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well tonight. I'm glad to be back on the show. Feel like it's been a little while, and always love talking these classic movies with you. And today is definitely no exception because this is a big one.
Yeah, well, it's one of my favorite movies from one of my favorite directors and one of my favorite actors, as you well know, from getting to know me over the months. And
Oh yeah,
you know how my affinity for Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro. So yes, we're talking about Taxi Driver, probably one of the greatest movies in my opinion. And if you look at AFI's 100 movies list, they update it every few years. Taxi Driver keeps moving up the list.
yeah.
One of the great movies of all time, and it's very interesting. I didn't realize how far up the list it was on AFI's top 100 movies
I
list.
feel like of all the Scorsese movies, I think this is the one that gets more and more relevant every year. Like the themes in this movie, like I think resonate even more today than when the movie came out, when they were really kind of ahead of their time. Like, people weren't really talking about some of this stuff then. And today, I mean, this is the world that we live in to some degree. So I think that probably plays into it, why, people keep reassessing and appreciating it more and more.
Absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It has more relevance every day with the people and the gun issues and the people that have anger issues and people that are lonely and that sort of thing. Ex-military people. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So this movie stars Robert De Niro. As aforementioned, Robert De Niro. He plays a character by the name of Travis Bickle. And also has in it very good cast, actually. A
Great
very
cast.
young, literally young. She plays a character very similar in age. She was 13 when she played the character of Easy or Iris, Jodie
Iris.
Foster. Jodie Foster. Harvey Keitel played, in the movie, he's known as Matthew or Sport.
Sport.
Sport or Matthew, whatever, however you want to say it.
Oh,
Also,
wait. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
also young Frankenstein.
Peter
Frankenstein.
Boyle. Peter Boyle is Wizard.
Peter Boyle's in there. If you like 80s sitcoms, then you recognize Cybill Shepard.
No.
Moonlighting. She was on Moonlighting with Bruce Willis.
Also in another great film, The Last Picture Show, Peter Bogdanovich. So she was still kind of lauded for that when she did this movie, and then became a TV star later.
Oh yeah, and then one of our best comedians of you might recognize him as the voice of Marlin, the father in Little Nemo. Albert Brooks is in here.
He is.
I mean, what a great! I mean, it's just you're like, oh, I know that person. Oh, I know that person. Talk about the cast a little bit, Jeremy.
Yeah. The thing I think we have to start with is this was the vision of a guy named Paul Schrader, who was a young up and coming screenwriter at this point. And the story goes that he was going through some personal issues, locked himself in a motel room, and cranked out this script in the matter of a few days. And it's kind of like Hollywood legend. And eventually made its way to Martin Scorsese. He wanted to make it. The studios thought it was too risky. It took some time. Then after he had some success, Mean Streets, and Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, he was finally able to get the movie made. And it's such an interesting, story that this guy came up with these disparate characters in New York. And I think Schrader, had spent a lot of time in New York, been through some crazy experiences there. And he just kind of like puts it all on the screen where you've got, these midtown political people that are trying to move up. And you've got them so well cast with people like Cybill Shepard and Albert Brooks. And then you've got like the cabbie guys. And it's like, if you want New York, slightly racist cabbie, you can't do any better than Peter Boyle, like just perfect casting there. And then to go to, the dregs of society, you get really interesting casting with Harvey Keitel, who had been the star of the movie that really kind of launched Scorsese, Mean Streets, and then to cast him in this smaller role in this really, difficult, creepy role, but it's so amazing. And then of course Jodie Foster, who really was a child star. She had been in movies like Tom Sawyer, did the original Freaky Friday around this time, and to cast her in this role, you could see the vision that Jodie Foster had for her career, where she really wanted to go even at that young an age, that she really took acting so seriously and wanted to do these serious films with great filmmakers, and had that vision that would continue, launching her, as a filmmaker later on, and a multi-Oscar winning actress. And of course, it really all comes down to De Niro, though. This was the second film that De Niro and Scorsese did together, but it's really, I think, where that collaboration really cemented, and you could see how well these guys work together, working off the Schrader script, which they would work with him again, the three of them. But it was just the perfect coalition of these two artists working together symbiotically, and there was a lot of improvisation on De Niro's part, and it's just like the perfect mesh of everything. And he's such a difficult character, and there's few actors that can make you care for such a damaged, difficult character like that than De Niro, and that was really one of his great talents, to take you inside the head of somebody like that.
Oh yeah, you hit the nail on the head. You really did speak the right words there. A very tragic, damaged, mentally disturbed person. But the title is called Taxi Driver. And so wouldn't you know it? The beginning of the movie is him going to get a job as a taxi driver. The guy that runs the taxi is asking him different jobs, questions and stuff. And he said, "Oh, I was in the military, I can't sleep. I have insomnia. I don't mind, the longer the hours, the better for me, because I can't sleep," and so forth. And then, so he gets a job as a taxi driver, and he has, like I said, these long hours. But we start to figure out this character early on. He wants to wash the streets of all the scum and all the filth. And I just want to say, I might say some words that people will be offended at, but I think some of the words that I'm using have to be said because of the story and the film that we're talking about. So I just want to get that out there.
Yeah, it's quoting the film.
Yes. He uses words like spooks, and scum and filth, and they have to clean the streets. And he's narrating this film, Travis Bickle is, through I think a diary. I think I don't know.
You get the idea that these are things that he's written down, that he's documenting his thoughts, and over the course of the movie, it begins to mesh into something more like maybe a plan, a treatise that he's writing. But this is stuff that he's writing down that we're hearing come right out of his head, basically.
One of the things he likes to do, he likes to go to peep shows. New York at this time was full of all kinds of crazy things. We don't want to get into any politics, even though there's politics in the movie. Talk about Mr. Giuliani or any of that stuff just yet. We like our filthy, dirty streets of New York with the scum.
That's the thing with this movie. Like, this is a time when New York was very different than it is now. They're like what he's saying about the scum and the filth. Like, there were people that thought this way about the city. There was a fair amount of crime. There was prostitution, and like you had like the 70s going on with Studio 54 type stuff, and all of this whole culture, and it was very different than it is now. And the movie kind of puts you into that time period and that environment, but it really does more than that. It kind of like it like uses New York in that time almost as a metaphor for this like personal hell that Travis is in, and he's like seeing his own demons like reflected in the city. And it's really kind of interesting how Scorsese isn't just telling you a straight story about, okay, this is a guy in New York in this time period. That would be a good movie if it was just like looking back at this time, but it becomes kind of timeless because it's more than that. It's like that what was going on in the world then is really more of a reflection of his inner world, and it's really interesting. And like, yeah, everything that it shows like is perfectly reflected in this character. And I just want to say, like, little aside, I went to film school, and one of the first things they tell you, like in writing class, is don't do voiceover narration. And like it's like a crutch and stuff. And this has got to be one of like the top like 3 or 4 movies where narration is used so beautifully and perfectly. And if you've got a writer on the level of Paul Schrader, you can do it. It can work. It's like up there with like the Shawshank Redemption, with like the great uses of narration, and it really boosts this movie even more into getting to this guy's world.
Yeah, speaking of voiceover narration, I first saw her outside of the Palatine headquarters. And he's parking outside the headquarters of Palatine, and he's looking through the window. He's staring at somebody, and Albert Brooks is talking to Cybill Shepard's Betsy. Hey, that cab driver's staring at us through the window. Should I go outside and say something to him? No, that's fine. He'll go away. No, I think we should say something to him. So he runs outside, and then bam.
Yeah, he's out of there.
He's out of there. He drives off. And then another scene that's it builds the story as we go on. Is he goes to a diner, gets his piece of pie, gets his coffee with some of his buddies, and that's where we meet the wizard, played by Peter Boyle.
Yeah.
And one guy says, I got a piece. I keep a piece. You never know what kind of people you're gonna meet these late hours, so you gotta have some protection. So I got a piece. I can let you know if you ever need a piece. Let me know.
Yeah.
So there we got that.
And, we feel like if Travis got a piece, he'd probably know how to use it because he is a veteran, and they're just planting all of these, seeds there.
Yeah. And so then he finally gets up the courage to go to the Palatine headquarters. He's dressed in a nice red suit, of all things. Maybe this is the only jacket he's got out.
Probably.
And he gets the courage, and he asks Betsy, "Hey, I want to join the campaign. What can I do? She's like, well, we always need help canvassing. All right, that's fine. I'll do some canvassing. But what do you think? What do you think about you and me?
Yeah.
Could we go out or whatever? Well, I'm working. I got to work till 4. Well, could we get some coffee or something when you get off at 4? All right. Well, if you're here when I get off, we can go get some coffee. So those two. That's when we first find out that those two end up having a date together, where she is kind of interested in him. At the movie.
It's very the movie, I think, throughout leaves you wondering like how you want to feel about it, and it's like it's already a little queasy. Like, how do we feel about these two? Like, is this something good for him? Is like this woman and this possible connection going to be something good, or is this possibly a setup for disaster? And why is she? Because we're getting a little glimpse into this guy. It's like, why is this woman interested? Like, why is she responding to him? There's a lot of like mixed feelings here that are gonna obviously keep building up as the movie goes.
And then once we know he likes her, so what he's trying to do is discourage her from being interested in the Albert Brooks character. Yeah. So I think there's an impulse between us. Nothing with him.
Yeah.
That fella you work with, I don't like him. He's really putting Albert Brooks down pretty good here.
Yeah. It's like everything Travis does is like there's like almost military strategy in it. Like you have to take out the person that's there. Like he's always like strategizing stuff in his way. It's like a weird way of looking at things that always this character is in his own kind of mind frame. But for the record, I think that she would never like look at the Albert Brooks character that way anyway. I feel like she would friend zone him, so it's kind of a non-issue, but it just is an interesting peek into Travis and how he approaches things.
It's like he's got an ulterior motive behind everything he does.
He does, yeah.
So then he asked her, hey, would you like to go to a movie with me? And of course, they decide on a date to go to a movie and whatnot.
Let me just say real quick here before we get to this part, like there are things in this movie that if you just like are a younger person today watching it, there's a historical context you're not going to necessarily pick up on. But you know, people in the 70s, like couples and stuff, would like. We didn't have like VHS, we didn't have the internet, so they would go to adult films and things of that nature, and like this was something that couples would do. And like there was a movie that came out in the early 70s called Deep Throat that was actually like one of the highest grossing movies of all time in terms of how little it cost in terms of how much it made. And it's like this was a whole thing going on at that time period, so it's kind of like it's really maybe bizarre to think of it now, but you just have to know there was a little bit of context there for that kind of phenomenon.
Yeah, you didn't have the phones, you didn't have the you didn't have the things that we do for you know, just our spare time nowadays. So they just looked for all kinds of different things to do. And so he does convince her to go to a movie with him, and of course she sees the movie that they're going to, and she's like, well, this kind of movie, this is not a normal movie to be going to. Oh, it's fine. Couples go to this movie all the time, you know. And she sits down, and things seem to be going good in the movie. And then all of a sudden, we jump into an orgy, and then she like
can't deal with it.
Yeah,
it's interesting. It's like he is so detached from life and from other people that he sees couples doing this, and he thinks this is what you do. He doesn't understand, like, the more you don't take someone there on a first date. These people have been together for a while. You know, there's so many like human connection things that he just doesn't understand, and he's always coming at things in this weird, lone, like outsider way. And it's you know, and it's just like one of the small tragedies of the movie in terms of this guy.
Yeah. No, and then before though she walks out, she compares him to Chris Christopherson. Like there's a contradiction between the two of them somehow, and he doesn't see it. He doesn't see the contradiction between himself and Chris Christopherson. And at the time, Chris Christopherson is a huge star.
Yeah.
So just for reference, he is,
and he was, I think, one of the music stars that had kind of publicly had demons and stuff like that. Like he was known for having had issues and stuff like that, like one of the more tortured celebrities. So she's drawing some sort of connection there. And again, but Travis just doesn't catch on to things, so he just doesn't understand anything when people try to relate to him.
Yeah, and ironically enough, there's some guys waiting on the curb. He goes to pick these guys up, and it turns out it's Palantine and his campaign manager. And they say, hey, we should have waited for the limo. That's fine. I ride in cabs all the time. And he has to do a double take. Travis does. He looks in the mirror a couple times. Aren't you Palantine? He's like, yeah, I am. And of course, he's going, I'm your biggest supporter. I'm your biggest supporter.
Of course.
And then, of course, he goes into his whole, the city's this open sewer full of filth and scum. And Palantine is taken aback by this a little bit.
But he rolls with it. It's like the perfect politician moment. Like, hey, I see what you're saying, son. Here's a button. It's a perfect political response to this insanity.
Of course, then he ends it with, no, I promise, you're going to win. I know it. I know it. You're going to win. He didn't know what else to say. He wants to be a supporter of the guy. You're going to win. So then he almost hits this girl.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm sorry. This girl, when the other he
tries to get in the cab, right?
Yeah. The Palantine and his campaign manager get out of the cab, and they go on. And this girl tries to run and get in the cab, and then someone tries to grab her and get her out of the cab. And Travis sees this, but it really doesn't stay with him for very long. But he does, as the film goes on, he remembers the girl and the guy. And we'll get into that later on before we're finished here. And then he calls up Betsy, and he convinces her to to go on another date with him. And he gives her a record. This is part of the. This is the whole part of the other scene. Oh, by the way, what's his name? The guy, when he grabs the girl out of the car, he grabs a 20 out of his pocket.
Yeah, you didn't see anything. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, you didn't see anything. Take this $20 bill. Yeah. So when we were dealing with the Peep Show beforehand, he gave Betsy a record. And she decides, no, I already have this record. You can keep your record. Because she's disgusted that he took her into the Peep Show. You know, that was pretty insulting to her. And of course, she didn't want to tell him before that she already had the record. But then when she was upset with him, he says, like, hey, take your record back. I don't want this record. I already have this record. And so she leaves. He keeps calling her. And he tries to keep asking her out. And she won't talk to him. And then he goes to the headquarters. And he gets basically attacked by the Albert Brooks character. You need to get out of here. I'm going to call the cops on you. And then he starts insulting her. He starts insulting Betsy and stuff. And then we find out that he has headaches and he has stomach aches. And this is something that he deals with on a daily basis. We didn't find out this before.
Yeah.
That he has stomach aches and headaches. And when you're alone and you're by yourself and you don't have a lot of people around you, headaches, it really comes to the surface because you can't think of anything else but your head pounding or your stomach pounding or whatever's wrong with you, you know. That's something that a lonely person, and I'll be honest with you, I can really relate to some of the things that Travis Bickle has gone through in his life or is going through. The headaches and stomach aches, for example, I can really relate to that. And then he goes and sits with his cabbie guys, his cabbie buddies, and one of them says, you know, you're only as happy as you feel. And I'll tell you what, I agree 100%. If you feel like when you wake up in the morning and you feel like being happy, you'll be happy. If you feel like being miserable every day when you wake up, and your whole day, you will be miserable. Trust me, I've been through this. It's so right. If you feel like being happy, you will be happy. And if you feel like being miserable, you will be miserable. So that's a very interesting line in the film.
If only Travis could listen.
Yeah, if only Travis could listen. You're right, absolutely right. So then we have an interesting rider in the cab.
Mm-hmm.
A gentleman by the name of Martin Scorsese gets a ride in the cab. And he says, hey, pull over here on the side. And he stops the meter. He says, no, I didn't tell you to stop the meter. Get that going. Put that back on. I just want to stop right here. Don't worry. Don't worry about me. Then he says, look up there. Look up there. There's a window up there. There's a woman in a window up there. You see that? He says, yeah. He says, that's my wife. And she's with a nigger.
Yeah.
He was like, what? He's like, what the heck? And that was just out of the blue. This happens, you know.
It's still really jarring.
Yeah.
It's still really horrible.
It's like, I'm going to kill him. If I find him, I'm going to kill him. I don't care. You know? And he's like, what the heck is this guy? It's the director, Martin Scorsese's in the cab.
It was he had hired an actor, and then, the actor couldn't do it, so he just put himself into the movie, and he's really chilling, like really convincing. It's an amazing, little performance that works perfectly in the movie. And you buy the mania from this guy for sure.
And this is where he first hears the term 45 Magnum.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm getting a 45 Magnum. I have a 45 Magnum. I'm going to shoot this guy. I'm going to kill this guy. And then he goes back and he talks to his cab driver buddies. they sit in this little diner and they talk, and he asks them, you know, he says, I'm having some bad ideas in my head. I'm having some bad thoughts in my head. What do I do? He says, you just got to keep going. You just got to move along and do your job and just let your job take over and don't have these other thoughts in your head. He's trying to give him advice of not to have these thoughts in your head. And, that's the best advice you could give at that time,
Yeah. Again, advice you wish he could hear. Yeah.
Then we remember.
Sorry, Dan, real quick, I'm having a little technical issue. I'll just be in like 30 seconds. I'm sorry. I got to be right back. If you want to, I don't know if you want to just continue. Be just a sec.
All right. So then we have him driving the cab, and then he almost runs into a hooker again. Now, this is the girl that got pulled out of the cab, and she was pulled out by a gentleman by the name of Matthew. And Matthew left the $20 on the seat. Now, when she got pulled out of the cab, he didn't know who she was. But then he almost hits her with the cab. Hits her and her friend because they run in front of the cab. So when they run in front of the cab, he starts following her down the street. And in the background, we get this guy running down the street. I'm going to kill her. I'm going to kill her, which is kind of funny because you don't usually see hear background things like this in the background. But when the girls are walking and he's following them in the cab, you hear the guy running. I'm going to kill that bitch. If I get that bitch, I'm going to kill her. Remember that scene?
Yeah.
Like on the side, you're like, what's going on? He's following these two women. You hear this guy running down the street. It's kind of funny in a way that you can have that background thing going in the background. But I said I was talking about the hookers almost get hit by the cab. Travis almost hits the same girl that tried to get into his cab earlier. So then he follows them, and then they end up meeting with these guys just so they would pretend like they're with them, and so then Travis drives off and he doesn't follow him anymore. Then the guy that is a cab driver, that's his buddy, who talked to him about having a weapon, he introduces him. He parks his cab and gets in his other cab, and his name is Easy Andy. He's a traveling salesman. And Easy Andy, he's a traveling salesman. What he sells is guns. And they go up to a room, and he unloads 2 suitcases full of guns.
Really good scene.
And he starts showing them all these different guns. 45 long, looks like the Dirty Harry gun. Then he's got a 45 snub nose, and he's got all these different guns. And he's like, I'll take the whole lot of them. And he's like, well, you can't take all these guns. Here, take this bag. Put all the guns in this bag. Well, this is 150. This is 100. This is 350. I'll take them all. Then he's like, well, this guy's taking all these guns. Maybe you want something else. Hey, you want some ecstasy? You want some you want some this? You want some that? It was kind of funny how he just spits out all these guns. No, I'm not interested in that. So, he just blows them up. No, I'm not interested in that,
Yeah.
And then, so he takes all the guns back to his room, which is another interesting scene because you're like, okay, what is he going to do with all these guns?
Yeah.
So he starts, you see one gun. The guy gives him a holster, which is the big cannon, the 45. And he's got a holster. He's got that thing on. Then he gets another holster, and he puts it on the other side of him. And then he puts one gun in his boot. And then he creates this whole thing inside his jacket.
Builds it, yeah.
He builds this thing out of, and that's got like a James Bond thing where the gun shoots out and he's like, ah! And then he puts tape to his boots and he puts a knife on his boots. So he's got 3 or 4 guns on him. He's got a knife on him, and he's all dressed up and whatnot. He's like, I'm a badass. He starts weightlifting. He starts working out. He starts doing push-ups and sit-ups. So before you know it, he is jacked up.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at his arm, and his arm looks like his veins have veins.
Yeah.
I mean, how freaking just ripped he was at this point in the film, because he wants to be the best he could possibly be. Whatever that means.
Some sort of killing machine or something. Yeah. What is this guy building to here?
Yeah. So then he goes to the rally for Palantine, and he's walking around. He's just kind of scoping things up. Walks up to the security guy, one of the Secret Service agents. Starts talking. Oh, you're a Secret Service agent, right? Yeah. Well, I spent some time in the middle. I was in the Marines or the Navy or whatever he said. I think he lied to him. Said something. And he goes, yeah, this is cool, right? Palantine, da-da-da. And he was like, yeah. I like what you do. You think maybe I could get into the Secret Service? He's like, yeah. Give me your name and address and everything.
Address.
And he gives him the wrong name.
Of course.
Henry Crinkle. He gives him the name Henry Crinkle from New Jersey, 154 something Ave in New Jersey. I can't even read my own writing. Yeah, so he gives him the wrong address. Oh man, I thought that was funny because you're like, he's gonna give him his real name because he's dumb. He's not that dumb.
He's not dumb.
He's not as dumb.
The interesting thing is, there had been some assassins. There was some like assassin killer in the 60s that really had inspired Schrader. And this, a lot of this stuff's pretty accurate to these guys. Like, they do things like this, like go, have a conversation with cops or different people. And later on, these people be like, they remember that this guy came and talked to them and asked them stuff. And it's like, there's this psychology that does have some basis going into the things that this guy's doing. And then we see it even later on in the 80s into the 90s, different killers, assassins, like the psychology of this guy is so accurate, to these kind of real life things. And, they based it on some stuff, but on the other hand, it was really it was really prophetic, some things that would happen later on. It's pretty crazy. And like everything that he does, it has some basis and some accuracy to, somebody like this that is going to do something violent and, is building to this.
Oh, sure. And then we have, of course, the scene that everybody, one of the greatest quotes of all time in movie history on AFI's top 100 quotes of all time.
Yeah.
You talking to me?
He's looking in the mirror. He's practicing, what we don't know. He's planning something in particular. But, he's got to practice it first. And then, of course, you get that scene in the mirror, which I'm sure which was improvised by Robert De Niro.
Absolutely.
And that's why, like I said, you get these great, you got a great script, a great story. But if you get a director and an actor like this working together, real magic can happen that, will change film history. These little moments.
Absolutely. No, I mean, Dust. We'll get into Dustin Hoffman. I got to get somebody to do Midnight Cowboy with me.
You walk in here.
We'll get into that when we talk about. You talking to me? It's your move. I'm the only one here. Who else you talking to? That's the whole quote. And he says you're talking to me a couple different times, and like you said, he's looking in the mirror. So he goes to this local store and he's eating healthier. He's drinking healthier. So he goes to get some orange juice. Once you know it, someone comes to rob the store.
Yeah.
And of course, they don't see him in the back of the store, and he comes up behind him and shoots him. As the guy's trying to rob the store. It's like, you don't have enough. That's not enough money. I know you got more money. And then the store guy, he goes, hey, my gun's not licensed. He says, don't worry. I'll take care of it. He gives him the gun, and he starts beating him with the crowbar. Beat him with the crowbar, like he didn't die already. He'd been already shot.
Yeah.
They kick him a couple times, make sure he's dead.
Yeah.
So this is when we really start to see where he's going. He is really.
We've literally watched him kill somebody at this point. It's really serious, and it was like nothing. It was like he had swatted a fly. It was not something very cold the way that he did it, and so now we know we're really going somewhere, not somewhere serious.
Yeah, absolutely. So then he parks outside the Palatine rally and writes a card to his family. This card that he wrote to his family is basically telling his family that he's not coming back in a lot of ways, that he misses them, but he basically gives them, because he knows the mission he's on, his mission, and he knows he ain't coming back. And the card is kind of funny. The card that he couldn't write a letter or something. He writes on a damn card, and it's like, I should have wrote the card down. I forgot to write the card. It's like this funny card. You wouldn't think that he'd write this heartfelt kind of message on a card like this, But
his parents are in the Midwest, right? Yeah. So you get a little glimpse of this whole other world that he comes from. That he's like, you don't know anything really in this movie, but I fill in this whole history of, he lived in the Midwest and then he went to war. And when he came back, he was never the same. He couldn't go back home. He ended up in New York and this weird isolated existence. And it's like that little glimpse of just that card of this other life that he had that was, lost forever. And it's just, a little drop of sadness, this character as we keep going along.
Yeah. So, like I said, he parked outside one of the rallies again, and the cop has to tell him, hey, you can't park here, so he drives off. But then he's watching TV, and he's seeing this kind of idyllic life and this whole thing on the TV. And he's like, no, life ain't like that. Shoots his own TV in his apartment, He's like,
it's funny. You see this, it's a cliche later on. You've seen this so many times in comedies and stuff, but this is probably the first time somebody did this in a movie.
Yeah. Because, I could see him seeing the news, and it's this different kind of world than the world that he's living in, And it's why do I want to listen to this crap on the TV? So he shoots his own TV. Then we finally get introduced to the girl that we kind of saw in glimpses.
Glimpses of, yes.
Her name is Easy, but her real name is Iris, but her name on the streets is Easy. Boy, that's not a good name to have on the streets, Jeremy.
Yeah, tells you a lot.
Yeah. So she talks to him, and then he's like, "Oh, you got to go talk to Matthew." So he talks to Matthew, says, I like this girl, what do I do? Okay, it's $15 for 15 minutes, $25 for a half hour, blah, blah, blah. And then he starts talking to him, and he starts saying things to him about her. She doesn't hear it, or either she doesn't hear it or she doesn't want to hear it, one or the other. But he starts degrading her and stuff towards, she'll give you a blowjob. She'll give you this. She'll do you every which way but loose, And then, he starts looking at him.
He's a salesman, just like the guy that sold him the guns. That's everything is commerce in this movie. And even the politician was selling him, and it's a horrible moment. It's really, really hard.
So he takes her up to the room, and then another guy hits him up. Hey, it's $10 for the room, so he has to give him $10. So he's already given $15 or $25, and now he's given $10. So he's seen how much his world, how much it costs to be in this world, or the money that they're making in this world. But he basically goes there to save her, to tell her, I don't want you to do this anymore. You can't. This life is not for you. These people are bad people. You should have heard him. He was talking bad about you, saying nasty things about you. Well, Matthew, Sport likes me. Sport knows, I'm a good person. He's a good guy. He cared for me. I came from nothing, and he took care of me. She said, why don't you go home? Why don't you want to be with your parents? Oh, my parents don't love me. This and that. I ran away from home. Blah blah blah. And Matthew took me in. He's been fantastic. Da da da. And so it's he starts really feeling sorry, and you as the viewer start feeling sorry for her as well. You know, because man, oh man, you kind of feel for what Travis is going through. You want to help her. You want to help Iris out. But she's like trying to give him a blowjob and stuff like that. She's, no, no.
That part is
It's brutal to watch. It's brutal to watch, especially.
Yeah.
She was 13 years old filming the movie, playing a 12-and-a-half-year-old girl in the movie. So that's
I think her mom was actually in the room when they filmed that scene. Yeah. Just, you know, I just like one little aside is that this whole part of the movie inspired like one of my other favorite movies that I think really homaged this, where, you know, like Travis descends into the world of prostitution and young women to try to like save a girl. There was a movie in England in the 80s called Mona Lisa. It was directed by Neil Jordan and it starred Bob Hoskins. And I just want to give a little, like, that movie was directly inspired in some ways by Taxi Driver and this material. And it's a really great film that I've seen it so many times. I really recommend everyone watch it. And it's just a cool connection how a great movie like this can inspire other great movies. And the other one little thing I want to throw out is that Jodie Foster actually on set, there was an actual teenage prostitute about her age that was really living this life that she was working with on set to get this character. And there's like little improv lines that she has that were things that this actual girl said. So it's like that makes it resonate. Like, you know, this is like a real thing that they're really channeling in the movie that was happening at that time. And yeah.
And a line I didn't say when I was talking was I have nowhere to go, you know, because she ran away and whatnot. So that really just kills you. I have nowhere to go. This is all she has, you know. Then you know, he leaves and you know, for whatever reason they kept on calling him cowboy. He looked like a cowboy to them. I don't get it. I don't understand that. You know, but I guess maybe the boots and the shirt and the jeans, he kind of looked like a cowboy without the cowboy hat.
I think it's, you know, it's something that the movie's implying is that he sees himself as like, you know, a hero in a John Wayne movie or something. That's like how he envisions himself, and like other characters are like saying this, you know, as part of the theme.
Yeah. So then they go to breakfast and they have a better conversation about this. And she talks about her parents and her home life. And he says, I don't want you to be here. You know, Sport. And she's like, no, Sport takes care of me. He loves me, man. He cares for me. You know, I wouldn't know what to do without Sport, this and that and the other. And he says, no, Sport's out for himself. Sport's about himself making money and whatnot. He's not about you, you know. And so they were gonna go do something again, but he's not comfortable with it. You know, she wants to do something with him, but he's not comfortable doing that with her. You know, because this is what she's programmed to. This is what she's good at. This is all she's good at. You know, and he's like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be with you like that. You know, I want to help you. I want to. You know, I want you to go back to your parents and go back to your old life. And she, of course, you wants her to go to school and whatnot. And she doesn't want anything to do with any of that. You know, she likes this life that she's in, I guess, you know, because she doesn't realize how bad of a world that she landed in. And so, and then she's like, well, I'll be lost without Sport, you know, and it's like, you as a viewer, you're like, come on now, get your head out of your ass. Like
these people, you know, are manipulated. They're programmed. These guys, you know, they do this. It's like a mental torture, you know, to kind of like program and manipulate, you know, impressionable, desperate, you know, young people. And it's something that's, you know, been happening through all of history. And, you know, the movie really doesn't flinch away from showing that. It's like what he does to her mentally is as bad as anything that happens to her physically. It's like, you know, a complete control.
Yeah. And this is where Travis basically says, I might be going away for a while. I'm going to give you some money, and I want you to go home, you know. And of course, you know, she doesn't. She doesn't want to go home. So this finally gets us to the conclusion of the other story that's going on.
Yeah.
We see him shine his boots, burn the flowers that he gave to Betsy that got returned to him or whatever. Somehow he ended up with the flowers. She never got them.
Yeah.
And he puts all his guns on, and we see him with a different hairstyle.
Yep.
Rally, and he's got a mohawk.
Before punk rock or any of that had happened, it was just something that they did. Like, I mean, I'm sure people had maybe it was a callback to American Indian culture or something, but it's just, I remember watching the movie for the first time, I think when I was a teenager, and being so struck by like that. This came out in 76. This was like, punk rockers from the 80s and 90s. How did they think ahead to have him have a mohawk? It's so striking.
Yeah, it was. And then there was somebody calls him Chief.
Yeah.
Before the movie ends, I think maybe it was Matthew or somebody calls him Chief. I can't remember who calls him Chief, but somebody says Chief.
It's interesting. It's like they're calling him a cowboy, and then they're calling him, now he's taking on the idea of an Indian. It's like this, they're calling back to Western movies and some sort of subtext going on here. It's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So he gets to the rally. He's there with his new mohawk haircut. We see him with all his guns. We see him just ready to go. He's listening to Palantine about America and making the country great. And the people, we the people, the buttons say we the people. He's got his we the people button on. It's so funny. We the people. I mean, this is the 70s, and then we the people came back, 20, 30 years later? We the people became like a callback 30 years later. It was interesting, these slogans, these political slogans. But when he starts seeing them pack it up and come down, he sees all this, the Secret Service, that's when he makes his move. But he gets probably 5 or 6 feet away, and one of the Secret Service guys sees him, and he runs away. He runs away, and he gets away. Yeah. Back then, I mean, today, that probably never happens. No. You probably couldn't even get that close to a presidential candidate, let alone get away. I mean,
because after this movie, we had a series of real-life Travis Bickles that changed it so that, there's security detail in any public sort of person now. Whereas back in this time, this wasn't really a thing yet. Like, there have been a few instances, but, this movie just like foresaw all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much of this movie that is foreshadowing future events throughout history of the last 30 years.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't get what he wants. He wants to do this job, and he doesn't get to do this job. So he figures, what the hell? You know what I'll do? I'll go kill the pimps.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I just ask you one thing that I've always wondered? Why did he want to kill Palantine? Like, it's never really like explained. Like, I'm not entirely sure what he thought he was going to accomplish, or how that was going to help his mission of like getting the scum off the streets and stuff.
Because I think he didn't believe him what he was saying. This whole
like he was a phony.
Yeah, bingo. And he wanted to prove that he was wrong, and that he knew he was going to go away or die doing this job. Then he chickens out and runs away.
Maybe he, was thinking, I'm going to do something big and bold, and I'm going to die like a martyr. And it wasn't even really about Palantine or anything like that. He just got like his wires crossed, like his heart was broken over Betsy, and all this stuff was in his head. And he thought, I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory. But he didn't really have a specific mission. It was just nebulous, and I think that's why maybe he ultimately doesn't go through with it and he runs off, because he really didn't have a motive. But now he's got this other thing in his head now, like maybe there actually is something I can do, maybe that something there I can go out in a blaze of glory and actually make it count for something.
Yeah, well, plan B is let's kill Matthew, let's kill the guy in the hallway, and let's rescue Iris and bring her home. Well, that didn't necessarily work the way he thought, because he shoots Matthew. He runs up, shoots the guy in the hallway, but then Matthew comes back and starts shooting him, shoots him in the ear. Then he turns around with one of his other guns, shoots Matthew again. Then the other guy's, I'm going to get you. I'm going to kill you. And he eventually stabs him with his knife. Then there's a guy in the room that we saw earlier take some money from Matthew, a gangster from what I'm guessing from some of the things that we see at the end of the movie. He's a gangster. He shoots him about 5 times in the face. And, of course, Iris is in the room. She's screaming, no, don't shoot him. Don't kill him. Don't.
Yeah.
She is so brainwashed. She wants these guys to live instead of Travis. And it's crazy. And then the police come in.
You know, movies didn't really have violence like this at this point. Like this, the way that it's shot, you know, there's like an over top camera, like showing him walking almost like you would look down at a blueprint, and he walks in, and just the way it's all staged is so striking. And even today, you know, the effects of the blood and the gunshots and everything is still really convincing. And it's not, you know, they talk a lot about action movies and things and how violence is kind of pornographic, where it's like you enjoy it and you kind of like get a thrill out of watching the violence and everything. And that Taxi Driver is so the opposite of that, where it's really repellent and it's like it's dingy and it's gross and it's horrible and there's nothing like you know, no thrill in it. And it was very like, this sequence was very controversial at the time. People wanted to give this movie an X rating, and you know, some people didn't even want to like release it on video and different things because it was controversial. And I think it still really packs a wallop, you know. And Scorsese didn't shy away from, you know, this guy. This entire movie is like a coiled spring, and when he finally springs, it is really violent. It is not pretty, you know. And this is where this kind of psychology is going to end up, and it's never going to be something pretty. And he makes you look at it. And I think that's one of the reasons the movie is so powerful.
Absolutely, hit the nail on the head. So then the cops walk in, and he doesn't have a gun. He doesn't have a weapon on him.
Yeah,
and he's all bloody.
The most chilling moment. So it's a blood chilling moment.
And then he takes his hand and he goes like this with his hand.
Yeah.
To his own head. And then
he goes,
cut.
and he's smiling while he does it. He's like euphoric. Yeah.
Like that. But then we cut and we see a wall. And we got newspaper clippings on the wall. Taxi driver fights gang. And it's like, you're like, what?
Yeah.
Taxi driver fights gang? Then you pan backwards and you hear a narration, and it's
the first time you hear a voice that isn't Travis's.
Yeah.
Very, very important.
It's the father of Iris. Yeah. And he's saying, thank you for saving our daughter. I wish we could come back to New York to thank you in person and this and that. We went to the hospital, but you were in a coma. This is when we find out Travis lived, but he was in a coma, and that he was praised for what he did.
Yeah.
He saved the hooker from the gangsters and the pimps. And you're like, what? What do you mean? He's a bad guy. He's the bad guy. What do you mean he's a good guy? Then we see him driving down the street in his cab. And he picks up somebody in the cab. And it turns out to be Betsy.
Mm-hmm.
And Betsy has a whole new outlook towards Travis. She is smitten with him. You could tell by her look, her eyes. She's like, I read what you did, Travis. And you could see the look on her face. She's like, yeah, I like this guy now.
Is there something you noticed about this scene about how we see Betsy? You only see her in the rear view mirror in the reflection. The camera isn't actually on her. It's only on the reflection of her. And that's how every time she talks, it's like his looking at the reflection of her through the mirror. So very interesting little detail.
Yeah, that was interesting. But she comes around the cab when she gets ready to pay, and he looks at her, and he says, "Don't worry about it," or something like that. I could barely understand what he said.
Yeah.
You don't pay, or something like that. And she walks off. He drives off, and that's the end of the movie. I mean, Jeremy, I am a huge Scorsese fan, and I am a huge Robert De Niro fan. You know this.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you right now, I don't think actors today, maybe Jake Gyllenhaal in Nightcrawler,
mm-hmm.
could give a performance this just disturbing and just crazed and just methodical in some ways. That Robert
and yet you still are drawn to him in some way. That's the real art of it. Like there's an inherent quality that you still latch on to. A lot of like Taxi Driver, lesser than movies try to do these anti-hero kind of characters, and you just don't care because they're not. Yeah, they're just bad guys, and you're supposed to be interested, and you're not. And it's that rare art to create such a damaged, characters on the self-destructive path and still be interested and still, kind of get something out of this story of this guy. Yeah. And a lot of it is the acting. A lot of it is that inherent talent and drive that De Niro has to, pull you into that character. And I even like his contemporaries. I mean, we had some of the greatest actors ever in that time, like Al Pacino and Dustin Hoffman, as you said, but I don't even think those guys, as great as they are, could get where he gets in this movie. I don't think that Pacino could do what he does in terms of, like you're terrified of him and yet you're still drawn to him, and he's kind of vulnerable and sad at the same time that he's scary and violent, and there's just this quality that De Niro has that's really rare, among screen actors in movies and in movie history.
No, he hit the nail on the head. All right, we reached that point where what's coming, Jeremy.
Mm-hmm.
The 52 Must-See Movies is based on a show and then a book by Robert Osborne and AMC mm-hmm. called The Essentials. And they got different groups of people, and they all picked movies, and they all were combined into this book. 52 movies. Myself and a few friends did the entire book in season 1 of the 52 Must-See Movies and Why They Matter. And I decided I think there are more than 52 essential films or must-see films, and I wanted to talk about some of them. And so I got you and some friends of ours to nominate some films, and we all narrowed it down to 52. I've gone off for that list a little bit for various reasons. But I nominated Taxi Driver because I feel it's one of the most essential films you could ever watch. But my question is, why do you think Taxi Driver is one of the most essential films, and an essential film for film fans, people in school, people that want to get into Martin Scorsese, maybe they want to watch De Niro movies.
Yeah.
There's various reasons why you feel like Taxi Driver is an essential film.
Well, I mean, you can't talk about movies and filmmakers and actors without talking about the collaboration between De Niro and Scorsese. And, for me personally, my favorite of their collaborations is Taxi Driver. I think, as much as they did other great films, obviously Raging Bull, there's something about Taxi Driver where I just have an empathy for this character, and there's just something really prescient about, the kind of the implied thing in the movie that they hint at and don't really, get into fully, which I think is cool because it's powerful that they don't spell it all out. But this is a guy who went to war, and something happened and something snapped in this guy, and this guy is just out there on his own. He's not being helped. He's not being treated. He's not being given any sort of psychological treatment. And, he's just imploding in this way. And, this is something that is always going to be an issue, and even if, it's not somebody that went to war, it could be any number of traumas or any number of mental, chemical imbalances in the brain that can cause people to be, hurting and be destructive and self-destructive. And we can't look away from a movie like Taxi Driver. We, as ugly as the movie can be and as difficult as it can be, you have to look at this and contend with this and say, I kind of care about Travis Bickle. Like, this guy, he's dangerous and he's scary, but at the same time, he's still a person, and he's still, every life matters. And this guy is in his own weird, crazy ways trying to reach out, and he's trying to connect. And, you see that in Deniro, you see it in his eyes, like he wants to connect in some way, and he's just damaged, and he's in physical pain, and he's in mental pain. And it's like this primal cry in this movie. And that's something that is very important to look at. You can't, movies, they're a great escape, but they're not just that. Sometimes you got to look at the ugly things so that you open up and your eyes are open. And, I have multiple family members that are veterans who, had went through some really horrible things. And, a couple uncles that went to Vietnam, a cousin who, was in the Iraq war and saw horrible things there. And, these guys, they need our help, they need our empathy, and they need, this is something that we have to be aware of. And we've seen where it can go. We've seen where these guys, and there's weird echoes that have come from Taxi Driver. Like there was a guy named John Hinckley who tried to kill President Reagan, who was obsessed with Jodie Foster. And it's a weird echo of this movie. Like the way that Travis is obsessed with her and thinks he wants to protect her, this guy was obsessed with her, and these weird little ripples. And then all of these assassins and killers and people that have come later on, like there's just something this movie hits on that is so universal. And I think one of the great things about the movie too is its ambiguity. Like the great movies you can watch again and again, and you're always wrestling with them. A movie as different as 2001 is one where you watch it again and again, and that's a science fiction movie, but you're always wrestling like, what's going on? What are they saying? And I think Taxi Driver has that because it isn't all wrapped up in a bow. I personally think that ending can be, interpreted different ways. Like my personal feeling is that he never left that place, like during a shooting, and then like as he's dying, he has this, like what happens at the end there with showing the picture, and he saved her, and he's a hero, and he like has this wonderful moment with Betsy, and like these are all the things that he would imagine would happen. This is everything in his mind that he thinks, oh, this is what I'm trying to achieve. Like I'm a hero, like in his own mind. And I don't, you can make a case none of it actually happened. Like the fact that we only see her in the reflection, like the reflection of his mind. Like it's all kind of weird and different the way that it's shot. And it's actually another great collaboration between Scorsese and De Niro is The King of Comedy. And The King of Comedy, slight little spoiler, but that has a similar ending where he plays a very damaged character, is doing something destructive, and then in the end, all of a sudden, he's celebrated and he gets everything he wanted. But it's like, did that really happen? Or is there maybe something else going on here? And it leaves you with that ambiguity. And it's that juxtaposition of, what this guy wants and how he sees himself, as with the, more of the reality of what is really going on and what he's really doing and how he's killing himself. And yeah, there's just a lot of power in that and in this movie. And it's not, the easiest movie to watch necessarily, but it's that, that isn't always what you need. You need something that's a little heavier. And, when you get this level of acting and filmmaking, it's just always going to be important. It's always going to be relevant. And I think 100 years from now, just like I said, the way that they film New York, like it's a reflection of his mindset, and his mindset is something very true to life. And these people are out there, and that's always going to be relevant. It's always going to be a movie that is, timely, no matter what time you watch it in.
And it's obviously, like I said earlier, it proves it because every year it keeps moving up on AFI's most influential movies list. So it
might be number one day. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? It might be number one. I mean, it's like in the top 12 or something, 11 or 12 now, and Raging Bull's in the top 10 now. So it's obviously people are looking at these films and they're saying, I can relate to these films in one way or another. I know somebody that's like this, or whatever, or we've seen the news and we see these types of people come out there. And then, the whole different thing with Hinckley and President Reagan and nowadays with all these children that are out there shooting people and killing people for no reason at all because
they're all had psychological issues and were bullied and gone through some sort of trauma. That it's always that, it's not like, somebody just is going to go shoot people. Like there's always a trauma and something that, this movie makes you aware of.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's why, it's an essential movie for me for all those reasons that you said. And you just kind of shed some light on the ending there where I have to think about the ending more now that you said that. I wasn't thinking about that at the ending when I was watching it again. Cause we like to watch the movies again, just to get a little bit up to date. So when we talk about them, but thanks a lot, Jeremy. I'm glad I had an opportunity to talk with you about this film. I know we got a lot more episodes coming down. Hopefully we get a chance to talk again. Where can you be found?
You can find me at Jeremy Paul Adams on Facebook and on YouTube. And then I'm also involved with Full Metal Media and Full Metal Trivia, where we do live movie trivia matches of different types. If you're into movies, you can see some fun trivia shows and competitions. And we have shows such as this one where we talk about movies and behind the scenes stuff. So lots to check out there.
And you can find me at Dan Skip Allen on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest, or at From the Fourth Row at WordPress.com, where I write about movie articles, or at CinemaSportsTalk.com, where I write about INESPORTLAKATALK.com, or also I host Sports Battlefield in Multiplex Entertainment. So if you like sports and you want to watch or get involved with sports trivia, I'm involved with that. So for Jeremy and myself, good night.
Night.